Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are digging into a wild one. We're going to explore a theory that connects some really ancient, forbidden texts with one of the most persistent ideas in all of modern ufology.
So, let's just jump right in. We're going to be looking at a pretty radical way of interpreting some of the biggest archaeological finds of the 20th century. Because what if these ancient texts weren't just dusty old records? What if they were more like a user's manual for reality? A manual that came with a very, very serious warning.
Okay, so our story kicks off in the mid-1940s. The world is in chaos, right? And right then, two almost simultaneous discoveries are made that would totally challenge everything we thought we knew about history, and maybe even reality itself. Now, this is where things get really interesting. The source material points to this incredible synchronicity. Think about it. In 1945, the Nag Hammadi texts are unearthed. 2 years later, in 47, the Dead Sea Scrolls are found. And in that exact same year, something mysterious supposedly crashes in Roswell, New Mexico. I mean, you've got this ancient celestial knowledge literally coming out of the ground at the same time an unknown celestial object is falling into it. It's this crazy coincidence that really sets the stage for this whole theory.
So what was actually in these texts that was so explosive? Well, the Nag Hammadi library, it claimed to hold the secret teachings of Jesus, but the teachings he gave after his resurrection. And the Dead Sea Scrolls, they came from Jewish mystics who wrote about how to literally transform yourself into a celestial being. You see, these weren't just slightly different versions of history, they were offering a completely different spiritual operating system for humanity.
All right, so what did these forbidden texts actually say? Let's get into it. They paint a picture of our world that is, well, it's totally different from what most of us were taught. They basically describe our reality as a kind of spiritual prison.
The core of their whole belief system comes down to this one word, Gnosis. It's Greek for knowledge, and for the Gnostics, this was everything. The key point was that salvation, being saved, wasn't about believing in some far-off God or listening to a priest. No, it was about achieving direct, personal knowledge, a kind of enlightenment that unlocks a power that's already inside every single one of us.
So their whole view of the cosmos is wild. They believe that inside every single one of us is a divine spark from this perfect spiritual place called the pleroma. But somehow that spark fell and got trapped here in our material world. And they saw this world as a deeply flawed copy, a counterfeit reality built by a lesser kind of imposter god they called the Demiurge. So yeah, they basically saw our reality as a prison, a simulation designed to keep our true divine selves locked up.
And this quote really nails the core problem they were grappling with. This idea, which they got from the ancient Greeks, was that our physical body is a prison for the soul. They believed we were stuck in this endless loop of reincarnation, being born again and again, but forgetting who we really are each time. And their whole goal, the entire point of Gnosis, was to break that cycle and escape the prison for good.
Okay, but think about it. If our reality is a prison, who are the guards? And this, right here, is where the story takes a hard turn from ancient philosophy into something that sounds a whole lot like a modern-day alien invasion story. They had a name for these prison guards, the Archons. It's the Greek word for rulers. And you've got to understand, in these Gnostic texts, they weren't talking about mythical demons or metaphors. They were describing what they believed was a real, invasive, non-physical force. Basically, the agents of that creator god, the Demiurge, sent here to keep everything under control.
So, how do they operate? The text described them as a kind of an intergalactic spiritual parasite. That's a heck of a term, right? And their main strategy is infiltration, not of our planet, but of our minds, our psyche. Their whole job is to keep humanity distracted, fighting with each other, and most importantly, afraid. Why? Because according to the Gnostics, our negative emotions, especially our fear, is literally their food. This was apparently taken so seriously that even the Apostle Paul supposedly wrote letters to warn people about them.
And this is a really crucial part of the theory. The texts claim that the Archons specifically target our leaders, kings, politicians, anyone in a position of power. The idea is that it's way more efficient to manipulate society from the top down. So, from the Gnostic point of view, the major levers of power in our world are being pulled by this unseen, parasitic intelligence.
So you have to ask, right, if these Archon parasites were around 2,000 years ago, where are they today? And this is where the theory we're looking at draws a straight, unbroken line from an ancient warning to a very, very modern conspiracy.
So on one hand, you have this ancient threat the Gnostics called the Archons, or the rulers. And on the other hand, you have, well, something else. The source material we're digging into makes a direct and, frankly, startling connection between this ancient idea and one of the biggest pillars of modern conspiracy theory.
And here it is. The claim is that they are the exact same force, that the Archons from these ancient texts are what we, today, call reptilians and greys. So the whole point here is that these Gnostic writings are basically the first ever documented account of the reptilian agenda. It's the same parasitic force, just seen through a different cultural lens 2,000 years apart.
Now, where does this idea come from? Well, proponents of this theory say it comes directly from the Nag Hammadi texts themselves. They claim these 2,000-year-old writings describe the Archons showing up in two main forms. The first, a reptilian form, and the second, a form that looks like a gray-colored fetus. And for them, this is the smoking gun. This is the direct evidence linking the ancient Archons to the classic alien forms we hear about all the time in modern ufology.
So what's their endgame? According to this interpretation, the agenda is pretty clear. First, they manipulate human society to create chaos and division. That chaos then generates a ton of fear, which they can literally harvest and feed on. But their ultimate goal, the big finale, is to assimilate all of humanity into a kind of AI hive mind, to just completely absorb us into their collective consciousness.
And get this, it's not just an external thing. The source claims the Gnostics believe the Archons actually installed a piece of their own consciousness inside of us. It's called the counterfeit spirit. Think of it like a spiritual virus or a piece of malware. And this archontic virus is supposedly the source of our dark side, that internal voice that pulls us toward fear, hate, jealousy, and all that.
Okay, so that's a pretty dark picture, right? But the texts don't just leave us there. They also offer a way out, a path to freedom. But the solution isn't waiting for a savior or following a religion. Nope. They argue the only way out is through a radical shift in our own consciousness.
So the Gnostics basically said there's a battle going on for your mind. They saw our intellect, our logical brain, as limited and super easy for the Archons to manipulate. It's on their frequency. But the heart, that's a different story. For them, the heart is our direct connection to Gnosis, to this infinite wise awareness. It's the one part of us they literally can't touch.
You know, there's that old Native American story that illustrates this perfectly. The one about the two wolves fighting inside of us. In the Gnostic version, one wolf is that counterfeit spirit we talked about, the Archon's virus of fear, hate, and division. And the other wolf, that's our divine spark. That's the light of empathy, compassion, and love. And they are always, always at war for control.
And that brings us right to the ultimate takeaway from this entire Gnostic worldview. So, which wolf wins the fight? The one you feed. At the end of the day, they believe that real power isn't out there somewhere, it's right here, inside you. It's an internal choice you make moment by moment about which part of yourself you're going to nourish. It suggests that the key to breaking out of any prison, whether it's real or simulated, is making the conscious choice to feed love, not fear.